I now request Dr. T.K. Parthasarathy sir to kindly come on to the dais. To introduce the man, T.K. Parthasarathy sir, he is the former VC of this institute, Professor of Eminence and Chief Advisor of Sri Ramchandra Medical College and Research Institute. He has held various posts inside and outside of the university, starting from 1973 to 2001. He has played a pivotal role in what the institution is today, and he has made sure it has always stood tall. To name a few of his honors and accomplishments, he has been the president of Dickinson Weiss Medical Group, Virginia, USA for 7 years. He has been the chairman of Cancer Program, Southwest Virginia for a period of 8 years. Also appointed as Field Liaison Fellow in Cancer for American College of Surgeons. He's been the chairman of Hospital Accreditation Committee with successful survey outcomes for 3 successive terms. He's been awarded the Doctor of the Year Award from Indian Medical Association in the year 1995. He is also served as member of BC Roy Award Selection Committee for a period of 5 years. Also the man behind the development of Ramchandra, I would like to reiterate that again. TKP sir, welcome. I request you to introduce Dr. Ved Prakash Mishra.
Respected Professor, Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ved Prakash ji, it is no small honor today to be here, requested my presence by the organizers, and I thank them for this unique opportunity. Dr. Ved Prakash Mishra is only too well known in this country. Very few people need an introduction for him. If I have to start talking about this visionary, this legendary figure, I think it will take hours. And within the short time, I'll try to shortlist a few important accomplishments of our dear Ved Prakash ji. It may surprise you, I'm 90 years old, and I have never come across in my lifetime any father writing a book about his son, and this has happened in Ved Prakash's life. His father has written a book on as a dream child, and it's remarkable. That says it everything. Now, he is not new to this university, not new to us. He has been with us for several years, and with his guidance, we have steered through several milestones of growth in this institution. He has always been an inspiration to us, and when I talk about him, there is so much to tell about how much this institution has benefited by his contribution, and may God bless him with very many more years that he can continue to give so much for education, healthcare, and research. To briefly mention a few of his great accomplishments, in year 2016, he received the prestigious BC Roy Award. And we know that in every respect, he deserves such a big award, given by none other than our President of the country. As a professor of physiology and in his research pursuits, he was conferred DSc and DMSc honoris causa position by the Indian Health Science University. He has to his credit more than 100 publications, and many of them enlightening in different areas of healthcare, education, and research. Many universities have honored him with the name of Professor of Eminence, Professor of Excellence, and Professor Emeritus. And as a board member of the management of Sri Ramachandra, he has contributed so much, but we are not the only one among the beneficiaries of his advice. There were 5 other universities who have been benefited by his being a member and guide them through various stages. Mishraji is a member of Board of Management of several prestigious universities. He is also the Secretary General of the International Network for Medical Health Professions and Bioethics Education. He is a member of the International Committee of Bioethics Asia Pacific region. He is a member of Advisory Board of Manipal Academy and other universities. He is a chairman of Global Network of Medical Health Professions and Education in Melbourne, Australia. If I have to continue talking about his great accomplishments, I'll take a lot of time, but in short, he is a legend. In short, he is a visionary. In short, very many institutions have been benefited by his expertise and advice. With a great pleasure, I wish to introduce to this elite audience our great leader and great person in the field of education, health and research, Professor Ved Prakash Mishra. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Esteemed Chairperson, my learned elder brother, former Vice Chancellor of this illustrious university, respected Dr. T.K. Parthasarathy, esteemed Vice Chancellor of the university, Dr. Uma Sekar, Honorable Chancellor and Pro-Chancellor of this university, esteemed faculty resource persons drawn from the various parts of the globe, members of the organizing committee, teaching and non-teaching staff of the university, delegates for this very notable historical and a monumental conference, invitees, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, recording my sense of gratitude and thankfulness to the kind, liberal, blessingful words from the esteemed chairperson, I deem it my pleasure to be addressing this very historical conference on a theme which in my humble opinion will be an extension of what Dr. Uma Sekar put across in her prologue and would be in tandem with the various multiplethoric discussions and deliberations that in terms of the sub-themes by various resource faculty are expected to be dealing with in these 2 days. Diligent compliments for this conference of its own type, international in nature, on a very apt, timely and relevant theme, chairperson. I'm just wanting to put the block annals in the backdrop of which this theme is required to be not only discussed, deliberated, but a genuine way forward is expected to be carved out. I'm not taking you into the historicity, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just taking to the debates in the Constituent Assembly which took place when the constitution of this great country of yours and mine was expected to be formalized. The Constituent Assembly put across 3 questions when it was wanting to incorporate about the education and higher education in the Constitution itself. And the three questions were: education for whom? Education for what purpose? And education for what cost? Pertinent questions. At the dawn of independence, these three questions have a material bearing as to where exactly we stand on today. And the answers which were put across by the Constituent Assembly Chairman, sir, are very pertinent and very self-speaking. It was put across: education for whom? Education for all was the answer which came to be given by the Constituent Assembly. Education for what purpose? Again the answer was: education in free India not only for the purposes of living or livelihood, but for the purposes of life. The second answer. And the third answer was: education at what cost? And the founding fathers of the Constitution in the Constituent Assembly clearly opined that it shall be the responsibility of the state for the purposes of providence of education at all levels to the citizenship of this country. It in this trinity of dimension, ladies and gentlemen, we are wanting to evolve onto this theme that we are taking up for discussion. These answers have been appropriately echoed in the various clauses that are incorporated in the Constitution of India. But then, there are certain interpretations which are called for. Under Chapter 3, Article 21, Fundamental Rights, it is clearly stipulated that every citizen is entitled for life and liberty as a part of the guarantee given by the state. But it was the Honorable Supreme Court in the year 1985 when it very loudly interpreted that it is not only just the entitlement of what is called as entitlement to life and liberty. This life entails entitlement to dignified and decent life and liberty. These adjectives are inbuilt, although not provided for. Why I am referring to this proposition? For a simple reason, that education has been incorporated as a fundamental right under Article 39A. But then there is a rider. Just as Article 21 contemplates not life and liberty, but decent and dignified life and liberty, let me put it across, Chairman, sir, with all humility at my disposal. Right to education is not a blind right. It is not just a right and entitlement to education. The unwritten word which needs to be spelt out loudly and clearly is, it is not just right to education, it is legitimate right to quality education at all levels. And therefore, whenever the word education is being availed, quality is expected to be an adjective prefix to it. Therefore, I put it this way on the basis of my understanding that entitlement is not only for the purposes of fulfillment of legitimacy of expectations, but as a part of the guarantee which is incorporated for the purposes of extending quality education to all at all levels. It is in this context, ladies and gentlemen, I am wanting to admire, appreciate the scope and relevance of the theme that we are discussing. Entitlement to quality education for what? Not for the purposes of cosmeticity, not for the just purposes of employability, but ultimately it has to be turned out in the form of an assurance in the entire operational system. When you say that the actualization has to take place through education, in the context of famous quote which I find very relevant, put across by legendary philosopher, former President of India, late Dr. Abdul Kalam. What does he say? He very categorically said, and I am tempted to quote, just as 19th century belonged to Britishers by virtue of colonial imperialism at their disposal, just as 20th century belonged to Americans by virtue of scientific advent and technology at their disposal, in the same vein, 21st century shall belong to India, not because of its military power, not because of its economic prowess, but transformation of demographic dividends, which is unique feature of this country, converting into precious human resources, and the only modality of this desired conversion shall be quality education, and quality education. When I am underlining this, the guarantee that we contemplate in order to be emerging in terms of the words of the Honorable Prime Minister as the Vishwaguru It is the 21st century which entitles us for this primarily on the basis of quality education in all spheres, in all quadrants, in 360 degrees, not as a matter of cosmeticity, but as an intrinsic assurance inbuilt into it out of responsibility and accountability as the answers to be given by. And therefore, the theme which I am wanting to put across, ladies and gentlemen, is quality is not an accident. Quality is not an aberration. Quality does not automatically descend from heaven. It does not automatically germinate from earth. It has to be inculcated. It has to be built. It has to be nourished. It has to be nurtured. It has to be put into the operational systems, put across to measurability and scalability against the predetermined and set standards. And then finally, cater to that as a part of ongoing mechanism in a manner where assurance gets incorporated as an outcome day in and day out. And finally, it is not only just the system, it turns out to be the way of life for not only living and livelihood, but for the entire life as a whole. When I'm putting this across, ladies and gentlemen, let us see where exactly we stand. We need to assess the picture objectively, pragmatically, and then evoke the answers which ought to be put across to policy makers for the appropriate use and utilization. If I say today, we are the fastest growing higher educational system in the world. No other country in the world is in a position to match the growth and development at the rate of proliferation of higher education avenues in this country in every sphere as compared to even the developed world taken together. Fastest growing higher education is taking place in this country. 1. 2. This fastest growing rate, even in the context of requirement if taken note of, it has been able to cater only 1/4 of the numerical requirement of the eligible targeted population is a matter of reality. The rate at which we are developing may be astonishing to the world, but still it has not been commensurate with the targeted demographic dividend that we are talking about, because 2025, Chairman Sir, the gross enrollment ratio in higher education which has been achieved by the country is 26.8%. And targeted achievement rate by 2035 by the government is expected to be 50%, which goes to indicate even after 2035, 50% gross enrollment ratio is achieved. The fact of the story will be 50% still those eligible to be incorporated in the higher education as a part of their legitimate entitlement, they will be outside the avenues of higher education. Therefore, the rate of development still has not been in a position to match the targeted population is a matter of reality. And therefore, this rate of development needs further strengthening so that we are in a position to incorporate the realistic guarantee of education for all to every person who is legitimately entitled to it. But then, this quantification, is it the only requirement? The answer is a big no. Expansion will always need quantified multiplication. But the requirement is, in the teeth of quantified development and rapidity of multiplication, quality cannot be put to sacrifice, and sacrilege is another challenge. How that is to be built in, how that is to be incorporated, how that is to be nurtured, again turns out to be a $1 million question. And not only in terms of isolation, it has to be in the form of a movement which has to be gripping the domain of higher education in all the 4 quadrants which is mandated and required. It is in this context, the important aspect turns out to be accreditation. What is accreditation? Very significantly put across in the prologue by the Honorable Vice Chancellor. It is assessment in terms of predetermined and set standards. But what the standards ought to be? Can standards be local? Can standards be local? Can standards be national? Can standards be focal? Or we have to look into the context of quality assurance in a world which is now globalized. Quality assurance in a world which now does not have geographical limitations. In fact, in regard to a world which is absolutely boundaryless. It is the international mobility which ultimately is to be taken note of for the purposes of linking the entire accreditation and quality certifying mechanisms, ensuring that the Indian graduates and postgraduates out of higher education turn out to be not only notionally relevant, nationally relevant, but globally relevant. Therefore, it is the global, international, global standards which are required to be the benchmarks to be incorporated and inbuilt into the operational system for quality centricity in higher education. More than that, the relevant stakeholders' satisfaction, it being consequential, it being impactful, it being relevant, it being cogent, and it being credible, these are the 5 touchstones on the basis of which it is required to be evaluated. On those evaluations, to begin with, standards and benchmarks that are being planned and conceived, they are to be aligned. At times, n number of propositions which are put across at the policy frame, Chairman Sir, is we have to have realistic standards. Yes, you should have realistic standards. But realistic standards leave a very huge wanton gap. It may be relevant to you and me, but it may not be in a position to really cater to that international mobility which now is the rule of the day, and therefore that cannot be lost sight of, is yet another test which is required to be cleared and clarified by all concerned. The third dimension which I am wanting to put across is very qualitatively and very significantly put. There are, in this country of yours and mine, isolated patches, isolated islands of quality centricity. There are extraordinarily quality-centric institutions, but there are not only bulk of mediocre, but even sub-mediocre institutions, and they are all importing to the cause of higher education. And therefore, at our own doorstep, the real problem is, are we therefore not in bulk evoking compromised higher education, is yet another question which needs to be answered. How exactly that mainstreaming is required to be done? It cannot be worked out by compromising or downgrading the standards. It can be by upgrading and capacity building which is required to be put across through not only institutionalized mechanisms, but through structured mechanisms at the national level. These are the propositions, ladies and gentlemen, which need to be diligently discussed. Not that the things are not happening. Things are taking shape, things are being concretized, things are being put across, but then yet there is a huge question. Having worked out from 1994 in terms of accreditation in this country through the unitary agency created in the name of National Assessment and Accreditation Council, today why is it that we are required to be putting the entire movement back to square one in terms of asking as to whether that mechanism was relevant, and now whether we should be incorporating binary accreditation and then followed by graded accreditation? Ladies and gentlemen, the world's model which has been put across as an eye-opener for all of us is, to begin with, accreditation is always grading, but grading should always result in inter se visibility and competitiveness for the purposes of ranking. Rank order turns out to be the consequential fallout of any and every accrediting mechanism, is the rule of the day. We may be talking about the expansion in a big way, but let us see where is our visibility in the international forum. Where is our visibility in the international accreditation? 500 top institutions taken together in the world till date. We have not been in a position to incorporate and echo a single entry in terms of that particular placement, which goes to indicate that our levels of quality still are not in a position to be fetching the legitimate place that we should have been entitled to, and we have not been able to reach till date. Gaps are there. These gaps may be systemic gaps. These gaps may be policy gaps. These gaps may be institutional gaps. These gaps may be individual gaps. But the journey of quality, you always bear with me. Ultimately, it goes on through 3 important phases. Quality is to be first individualized. Leaders have to be created for the purposes of inculcation and percolation of quality. This individualization ultimately has to result in internalization. And this internalization then has to be converted into the housing of the internalization, what is designated as institutionalization of the quality. Any aberration, any breach of path, any hiccup in this particular transition ultimately turns out to be a huge obstacle, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore, it is imperative, not that we are not interested in attaining the quality standards, not that people are not interested in wanting to be in total conformity and matchability, but then there are difficulties, there are constraints, there are limitations, there is paucity of awareness, there is paucity of understanding, there is paucity of understanding the intricacies, how exactly they have to be dealt with. Talking on paper in terms of collaboration and linkages and working out absolutely healthy practices transfer on papers look to be good. But the confluences, the congregations, the clusters which are mandated, still we have not been in a position to work them out, even in the leave aside in terms of systemic manner, but perhaps even at the individualized manner, there is definitely a wanton gap onto that particular direction. I am not putting the problems, ladies and gentlemen. There is a way we have to go. It is defined. 21st century mandates that if you and me are expected to be emerging as global leaders in the domain of higher education in terms of the prophetic declaration which has been put across by Dr. Abdul Kalam, then the only way is quality-centric higher education as a whole. And that quality-centric higher education, therefore, needs to be worked out in terms of doables, in terms of demonstrables, and in terms of deliverables. We are still harping on structural quality centricity. We still have not been able to work out the dimensions where outcomes and outcome analysis turn out to be the real order of the day. Proposition is simple. It has to be a 4O model approach in the entire journey of quality centricity. Our objectives are loud and clear. Right from the commencement and incorporation in the Constitution, be it the Radhakrishnan Commission, be it Kothari Commission, be it the 1968 Education Policy Document, be it 1986 Education Policy Document, or for that matter, be it 2020 NEP document, objectives have not undergone a single change. Right from 1948 document till 2020 document, the objectives of education, higher education, have almost been governed as a capital K, which stands for constant. They have not undergone a change, and they cannot undergo a change. They need not undergo a change. O has been constant, but then dimension of internationalization, which has come up, results in correspondingly going in for second O as that of operations. The operations have to be commensurate with the objective. Objective and operations make one half of the O model. But what is the use of the operations if the outcomes are not predetermined and tangible outcomes are not compared against the predetermined outcomes, identifying the resultant gap between the two and therefore need for bridging the gap. But that is also only 3/4 of the story, Chairman, sir. Finally, the quality entails not only objective. Quality entails not only operations. Quality entails not only outcome, but quality entails the 4th O, and that is optimization of the outcomes to a near total of 100%, and maybe a surplus add-on over and above the same. These are the benchmarks or the annals in which the entire proposition has to be evaluated diligently, carefully, critically, and then work out a way forward for the purposes of making things move in a realistic manner. Manuals are made by the accrediting agencies. What inputs are received by the accrediting agencies for making of the manuals? I am telling you, very minuscule. What evidences are availed for that particular purpose? To my understanding, even being a part of the planning system for last 4 decades, non-existing. Therefore, it is an imaginative, contemporary thinking which by virtue of perhaps experienced lot of the people is resulting in it being knitted together. It is responsibility of institutions like Srihar. It is responsibility of resource people like congregating in this conference, and therefore I say, what are we discussing? We are discussing accreditation as a way. For what purpose? for the purposes of ensuring ranking. And ranking not only in terms of national inter-se comparison, ranking for the purposes of making the visibility of Indian higher education into the global annals by becoming a significant number in top 500 higher educational institutions of the world. That is the proposition targeted. That will be whether it is accreditation or it is ranking. What is going to be the mother repository? The mother repository is going to be only the quality, quality and quality. Quality is the mother repository. Assessed through accreditation, certified through accreditation, but realistically put across to the required visibility globally is through the ranking, which turns out to be an important aspect. You cannot cut throttle or you cannot intersegment the same. Path of quality is creation, harboring, nurturing, inculcating, consolidating and optimizing for the purposes of it being assessed through accrediting mechanisms updated from time to time by the accrediting agencies with diligent certification born out of objectivity, and finally it must turn up into ranking. That ranking which ultimately makes all of us believe and realize in the global annals where we stand, where exactly we are expected to stand, and what is the remaining gap between the two, how exactly that is to be mitigated. This is the charter which as a layman I have been in a position to understand and decipher. Therefore I am putting across to these learned, ignited minds which are present over here. Let us do not deliberate for the purposes of non-consequential outcomes. Your sub-theme discussions are absolutely relevant. Discuss out, but come out with not a declaration, just a way forward, which can be availed for the purposes of policy frames as may be mandated and required. Do not think that our suggestions, our observations will go a-begging. I know the vacuum in which the frames are required to be operated on. It is needed, it is desired, but then collective wisdom with learned brains present over here should be in a position to not only collage things, but also collate things so that at least if not a doable path, even a dotted path stands created, it will turn out to be a yeoman service, and that would be, in my humble opinion, the real success of this very historical, notable and monumental conference, which would then be in a position to give a real doable path for the purposes of beginning, not only beginning, but continuing the journey of quality. In conclusion, what I am wanting to say, Chairman, sir, very beautifully put across, on the path for perfection, nobody has ever attained perfection. But whenever you walk on the path of perfection, on the way what you are able to achieve is excellence. And excellence, other name is quality. This quality, therefore, is not an imaginative fiction. It is not just a matter of few classes. It is a legitimate entitlement of the higher educational institutions, independent of the place, placement and nature, ladies and gentlemen. And for them, a path is to be created. At least an indicative path is to be created. Occasion and time is now, and you shall do it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for that intense speech. I now request our beloved T.K. Parthasarathi, sir, to kindly felicitate the chief guest of today.